I'm Tim, welcome to Watch What, and thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at the Cartier Santos 100, or the Santos 100 Large, stainless steel 38mm by 51mm lug to lug. This Cartier Santos 100 is, like all the watch showcased on our channel, Watch You Want Inc., actual inventory available in-house and ready for purchase and immediate delivery on our retail website, watchyouwant.com. And if you like the latest news, views, and reviews on our YouTube channel, please subscribe to it at Watch You Want Inc. on YouTube. Now, the great thing about the Santos 100 is that it takes the image of the classical Santos Dumont aviator's watch and it upsizes it for the 21st century. Now, the Santos, as those who love watches may be familiar, was the original aviator's watch back when men were men and men who flew aircraft flew Zeppelins. Well, dirigibles. But the bottom line is the watch, originally designed for the operator of a dirigible, Alberto Santos Dumont, the pioneering Brazilian aviator, was designed to reduce his workload when he had his hands on the controls of his craft. It was a two-handed job to fly those aircraft back in the early 20th century, so a pocket watch that required you to grasp it and then put it away simply wasn't practical. A wristwatch permanently affixed to the forearm and available at a glance was the solution. So Santos Dumont commissioned his friend Louis Cartier to design that solution, and the rest is history. Fast forward to 2004 and we get the watch you see here, the Santos 100, to celebrate one centennial of the Santos model. The bottom line is this thing, although 38mm across and 51mm lug to lug, wears approximately as a conventional 41-42mm watch would if it were round. You can see on my wrist 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. It's actually a perfect fit. There's no overhang, and at the same time, there's no sense that it's undersized. This is an outstanding example of a large watch that wears much smaller than its nominal size. Again, 51mm lug to lug, and yet you can see the strap clearly splays out on both sides, so it has a pronounced flare, a clear indication that this watch isn't pushing the limits of fit with my smallish wrist. And if your wrist is small, 6 inches, maybe even 5 3/4, you're not going to have a problem wearing the Santos Large, because the Santos 100 in stainless steel in this particular size is designed with camber, that is actual curvature to the case, and nicely integrated alligator strap that actually tucks into the lugs and starts its curvature before it even leaves the lugs. A very good fit ergonomically. The case back is flat, the case itself is broad, and it spreads its mass nicely. It's got a satisfying amount of luxury watch heft to it, but because it is so broad and so much of its case back is in contact with the skin, there's no pressure point, there's no hot spot, it really doesn't focus its weight on any one part of the skin. Now, the other part of the ergonomic equation is the clasp and the strap equation. So this is the flip side to the Cartier Santos 100. Alligator, you can see a beautiful almost burgundy brown with a monotone stitch. It is slightly bolstered as it moves towards the lugs, and it integrates almost seamlessly with no gap at the termination of the strap and the beginning of the case, and yet it does taper so that it's very flexible by the time it reaches the stainless steel double deployant clasp. And I have to say, as clasps go, this is one of the toughest looking clasps I have ever encountered. This looks like something the Terminator would wear if Arnold were ever willing to give up the AP. The bottom line is twin trigger release for outstanding security. This is not a friction fit clasp, and each piece is beautifully finished with a pronounced brushed steel graining and then an immense amount of substance, all milled out, very secure when closed. It closes with a satisfying snick, and when closed recapitulates the motif of the bezel with the screwed-in fixtures and contrasting finish, alternately polished and brushed. It's a beautiful piece that's quite honestly up to the standard of the Cartier Santos and its history. Now, the Santos is redolent of history, but I mentioned this is the Santos 100, the centennial watch, and the key distinction there is that the Santos, designed as a utility watch, sort of a sports watch, if you will, in 1904, had become very much a dress watch by 2004. Like other sports watches from the early days of the wristwatch, like the Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso, it had made the transition from sort of rough and tumble timepiece to a more genteel profile. Well, the Santos 100 sort of brought the Santos back to its roots. 100-meter water resistance, also a much bigger, bolder set of proportions to read like a modern watch, a modern sports watch, very much in the mold of something like an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore. It's somewhat oversized and yet not ungainly because it is still relatively thin in relation to its size. And the proportions of the case to the bezel to the dial are largely left intact even as each one is scaled up in its own right. Now, a big part of the impact of this watch is the screwed-in bezel, and in a lot of ways, Louis Cartier beat Gerald Genta to the punch on this design by almost 7 decades. We remember this design from Genta's Ingenieur SL for IWC, of course from the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak in 1972. A lot of these watches in this style were designed by Genta during the 70s. Louis Cartier had him beat, again, by a lifetime. And the look absolutely fits the highly technical, bold, modern style of this stainless steel Cartier Santos 100. Now, there is contrast in as much as the case itself features alternate brushing with a beautiful hand-chamfered polished section along the shoulders of the lugs and the shoulder of the case. Very subtle, but it is there. And that hairline polish separates the top of the case and the hoods of the lugs from the flanks. So you have the brushing and the polish before you get to the full, bright polished bezel. Again, the gorgeous implementation of a screwed bezel with a high polish really gives this watch an upscale technical aesthetic that shines, figuratively and literally. Now, the dial is another example of something old and something new that enhances the essential appeal of the Santos 100. First, let's go with what's old. The stylized Cartier Roman numerals here are a tribute to great Cartier timepieces of the past and can be traced right back to that original 1904 Santos Dumont. They continue to function well on an oversized sports watch because you can tell what time it is from a mile away. With the matte silvered background and the black lacquered Roman numerals, visibility, legibility is excellent. Now, as I mentioned, there is something new here as well. The presence of a constant seconds hand. Santos Dumont himself should have been so fortunate. Cartier gives you that now, and it's a practical measure that really every high-grade modern luxury sports watch should have. Instead of the original Breguet-style hands, blackened broadsword hands with lume, and that's key. This being a watch that does have one foot in the sports watch world, being able to see it at night is key. Cartier gives you that with the blackened broadsword hands. And in place of the originals, sector or railroad, subdial, or inner minute track, this one features a sort of squaring off of the characters around the inner hour track, and they create the optical illusion of a rectangular inner minute track with the hash marks for the minutes or 60 seconds, if you will, providing the calibration. Also, you'll note the absence of a date. Cartier keeps the look clean and symmetrical and doesn't break up that stylized hour track. Of course, traditional Cartier elements, the Roman numerals, the Cartier signature at 12, and of course the secret signature built into the Roman numeral V or 5 of the Roman numeral 7 assembly is there, present and accounted for. Now, the gorgeous camber of the watch includes the case, it includes the crystal, the bezel, and the dial, and from this angle you can see it to good advantage. There's a lot of attention to detail in this dial, and although it's simple at first glance, it bears repeating. Close scrutiny will pay dividends and give long-term pleasure to the owner of a Cartier Santos 100. Likewise, traditional Cartier elements, including the Cabochon crown, well represented on the flanks. I'll show you the case back. It is not a display case back watch, but you can see the Cartier script and the notice of 100-meter water resistance. Inside you'll find what's called Cartier caliber 49, so an automatic bidirectional winding movement based on the high-grade thin and fine ETA 2892A2. It will hack, so when you pull the crown, you can stop that constant seconds indicator and synchronize it precisely to a known accurate quartz watch, clock, or an atomic timer online. Like I said, automatic winding with a modern 4 Hz beat rate, 21 joules with a 42-hour power reserve. It's a simple but sturdy and time-tested timing device for a time-tested design. This is the Cartier Santos 100 large stainless steel 38mm by 51mm lug-to-lug, wears like a 40 to 42mm round watch. Available for purchase and immediate delivery on our website, watchyouwant.com.